Hello, everybody. I'm Jay Shear, and welcome to another episode of Business Minds Coffee Chat. The goal of this show is to share insights, help to lift and inspire others, and deliver relevant, meaningful, and actionable content. Today's guest is a husband, a father of two, a lifelong martial artist, and leading expert in self-defense, the chief instructor of Florida Aikido Jiu-Jitsu Academy, a mentor and role model to countless students and parents, and one whose positive impact can be felt far beyond the walls of the dojo. I'm excited today to welcome George Rego. George, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jay. I'm quite honored to be here. I'm really looking forward to a good conversation, and again, honored to have your invitation. So let's have a good chat.
Absolutely, likewise. So let's dive right in. Lao Tzu is credited with the quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." Where did your journey begin?
Well, I was born and raised in Connecticut. I was the first of my household to actually be born in the United States. My parents and my brother were both born in the Azores, the Portuguese islands, and so that's where I began, humbly, and a little immigrant family, and pretty early on, before I was 10, 8, 9 years old, began studying martial arts, and I was fortunate enough. Fortunate even seems like an understatement, but I was fortunate enough to walk into the dojo of a true pioneer and legend in the martial arts. And in the martial arts world, sometimes that phrase is thrown out a little casually, but he's a legitimate, he was as legit gets. And I was able to walk into his dojo as a young boy. And from then on, the course of my life changed entirely. I really don't have a concept of what my life would be like having not walked in, because from that moment on, everything about my life has been shaped by the martial arts and a passion for passing forward the arts as they've been taught to me. So I studied under his tutelage, until he left this plane, but I still consider myself a student of his. And pretty early on, or relatively young, I should say, he awarded me teacher certification, which he was a bit conservative in doing that, but in my case, for whatever reason, he felt that I was ready. And so as a teenager, 16, 17, I started teaching. And at that point, I certainly wasn't the teacher then that I am now, but as you pointed out, the journey starts with a humble single step, and 20 years later, here we are, and we've got a thriving dojo with many students, and in our association, we're one of the premier schools doing it full time, so that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of where we're at.
Well, it's interesting. I remember as a young child, I believe I was in, I want to say elementary school at the time. I had gone to the restroom, and then there was a kid who, kind of a tougher kid in my class, and we got in a fight in the bathroom, and it was very brief. Yeah. And he had, I don't recall all the details, but I remember he kicked me or used some sort of arm bar or something. And after that, I found out that he was going to a local karate school, for younger kids. And I wanted to go so bad. That was really my first introduction to karate and what the martial arts were. And I didn't know a whole lot, only the fact that someone else was able to overtake me, and it didn't feel good. Yeah. So just kind of winding back a little bit, what was it about walking into that dojo that first time that just completely changed the trajectory of your life and your world? What did you attach to it?
The truth is, if I step back even a little bit further, my mother's the one that tells the story best. But for whatever reason, Jay, I can't really tell you why it is. Since I was very young, even, we're talking 3, 4, 5 years old, my parents, just say that I was fascinated with anything to do with combat, whether it was a Bruce Lee flick, an army movie, a cowboy thing, pro wrestling. It didn't matter if it was like mano a mano going at it for whatever reason. That was, the world to me, right? But somewhere along the way, as a young child, I started to become fascinated with this idea that was more akin to, although kind of stereotypical, it was more akin to the Japanese model of martial arts, in the sense that you had someone who was very physically capable, but yet was not imposing with that capability, right? It wasn't like the pro wrestler who you look at him and it's like an Adonis and you go, well, yeah, obviously. There was something in the Japanese martial arts model that was, and again, I couldn't articulate it as a child the way I am now, but there was something about it that fascinated me. It was kind of the yin and yang, the ability to be quite physically capable, but nobody would really know it, right? It was just, they may tell there's something about this guy, but they wouldn't know by looking at you, right? And so when I walked into the dojo the first time, um, it was like watching magic. I remember there was a young lady in particular by the name of Amy, and her and her brother were students of the class. And Amy was maybe 5 feet tall, maybe, you know. And I saw them working for a while, and uh, after a few minutes, Amy started working with some of the big guys, Jay, and she was quite literally throwing these guys around. I mean, it was not a contest, right? And here was small Amy. Her brother was a pretty big guy, older than her, and a couple of the, significantly bigger people. And she looked like she was doing this and doing it with relative ease. And as a kid, it might as well have been magic to me. Going, what, does she have some kind of power that I'm not aware? What is going on? Well, she did have a power, right? And not the way I was thinking about it, like a superhero, but there was just something so fascinating about this idea of this small person who, if you were to look at them across the room and go, these two people are going to go at it, who are you putting your money on? Amy would not be the person you'd put your money on, right? You'd probably double your bet on the other person. And so there was just something about that was so fascinating to me, that with the right knowledge, that not only she could do this, but she could do it with a relative ease. And my own teacher, Shihan Arel, Master Arel, he was a Marine, super tough guy, but he was 5'3", 5'4". He was not a big man himself, and it just fascinated me. And the truth is, Jay, that I'm just as fascinated today. It never kind of went away. I just, I understand it better, but I'm still just as intrigued and as fascinated and as excited about it today as I was then.
Do you consider yourself still a student?
Yeah, actually, the quote I always tell my students is that I'm often the teacher, but I'm always the student. And so as soon as in martial arts and in life, I would say, and in business, as soon as you lose the idea of being a student, that you've got this, is the moment you start to deteriorate. And so part of the martial arts ethos that we carry into business or life is this, in Japanese we call it kaizen, which is small tiny improvements day by day that accumulate. And like we say, every time I practice I suck less, so I practice a lot. And so it's that idea that you're absolutely always a student, and somewhere along the way that you may be teaching others in an assisting capacity, or like in my position, I'm teaching quite often. And people may view me as the teacher, and that's one hat I wear. But as a martial artist, the hat that never goes away is the hat of a student, for sure.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to live. And just to echo a point that you made, and I'll say it slightly differently, but the moment you think that you know something, you block the learning to that topic or that subject. So it's always good to remember to remain the student, remain green, and always remain open to learning new things.
Absolutely. If I could just interject one thing that
Sure.
may be of interest and maybe not, and I'm sure most of our audience isn't aware, but there's a lot of martial arts that end with with do. So there's, for example, taekwondo, judo, Our martial arts system is Jukido. Our philosophy is called Bushido. There's this ending in these Japanese words that's do, and do actually means a way or a path,
Hmm.
right? And so that's the idea, that even the teacher, even if he's someone who's been doing it 50 years, is still on the path. They may be a little further on the path than you are, but they're not at the end of the path. They haven't finished the journey. They're still learning. And that idea of do, or the way, that we add to the end of a lot of our martial arts systems, it directly ties into that idea, that it's a constant reminder that, hey, if Jay's on 95 and I'm on 95, he may be at a further mile marker than I am, but he's still on the road. He's still traveling forward. So he can look back at me as a relative beginner and go, hey, here, there's an issue here, or here there may be a little obstacle, and I've been there, so I know. But the fact that I'm giving you advice and teaching and guiding should not be indicative of the fact that I've got this, I'm done. Look at me as the end all be all. That we're all still moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I believe that many people feel, or they've heard maybe some of the belt ranks, so they're probably used to the term black belt.
Sure.
And there's probably a thought that once you have achieved a black belt, that you've learned everything that there is to learn,
Yeah.
and you've reached the top of the rankings. And I've heard you say before that earning a black belt is really just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, yeah. That is one of the biggest misconceptions, that as a teacher, both to the general public, and sometimes, if I'm being honest, even with our newer or intermediate students, that you're constantly reminding them that this kind of pop culture idea of the black belt as the master is not true. It is absolutely not true. A black belt it is not to undermine it. It is a significant achievement, in the same way that someone maybe graduating high school is a significant achievement. But after high school, you're still a beginner in some ways, academically and in life, right? There's still a lot to learn. You've mastered some basics. You have some basic competency to go out there in the world, but you're by no means an expert. And actually, it's funny, in the Japanese, the belt ranking systems, let's say, and for black belt, you'll hear a first dan, or a first degree black belt, or a second dan, or a second degree black belt. So they're degrees to black belt.
Mm-hmm.
The first degree black belt is actually the only of the degrees that doesn't have a number attached to it. In Japanese, it's sho dan, and sho is actually the Japanese character for beginner. It's beginner black belt.
Okay.
It's like you're at the beginning. So again, something like finishing high school, or even if it was medical school, the first day that you got a diploma and someone says you're a doctor, well, you're still a beginner doctor. You still got to get out there, and today's your first day as a doctor. It's not you're a seasoned veteran as a doctor. And so the black belt is something akin to that. That there are definitely progressions of black belt, and it again is indicative of the whole idea that we keep moving forward and keep learning. A black belt is a scaffolding, but it's not the end of the journey by any means.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks for that explanation. So let's talk for a moment about the codes of Bushido and what role they played in your life and how you teach and lead. And if you could explain what the codes of Bushido are.
Yeah, the Bushido is a Japanese word that means the way of the warrior. And without going into a huge history lesson, they were initially developed by feudal warriors in Japan as kind of a counterbalance, actually, to the fighting prowess of these warriors, right? So you have these guys that are experts at hand-to-hand combat and warfare. And in Japan, in feudal times, they actually had the legal right to cut someone down if they felt insulted or anything like that. No questions asked. And so the idea was to counteract this with a sense of responsibility with the weapons that they carry, either physical weapons or their body as a weapon, right? That they had a moral obligation to use these things responsibly. And so we kind of take an updated perspective, right? In the modern world, we're not feudal warriors in Japan, but we still find value in these codes, things like courage, benevolence, politeness, justice, loyalty, veracity. And applying these things into our life are very, very important. One of the things that I talk about often with kids is that I say that our jujitsu, our Jukido jujitsu training, is something akin to having an invisible weapon, right? And if we took that idea and we said, well, what if it was an actual weapon like a firearm? Well, if I were to give you a firearm, it would be incumbent upon me to make sure that, well, you're a responsible person to begin with. I'm not just going to hand you a firearm willy-nilly. I have the responsibility to teach you the proper handling of the weapon, the proper care of the weapon, how to store the weapon, when it is appropriate to use it, when it is inappropriate to use it, right? And so it's not just here willy-nilly, here's a firearm and do with it what you will. No, if I'm going to teach you how to throw someone down or choke someone unconscious or break human limbs, well, I have to make sure that not separate but intertwined, intertwined with that is a set of moral ethics and codes that make certain that we are not only fighters but martial artists. And there is a difference. My sensei used to say all the time, any idiot can learn how to hurt someone. Teach someone how to choke someone in 2 minutes. That's the easy part. But to lose your temper and have someone push your buttons and no, buddy, I could choke you unconscious, but I'm not going to, right? Because I have a moral code that dictates how I use these things, or is absolutely, without the codes of Bushido, you really are teaching people just to fight. And so these codes are an essential, intertwined, cannot be divorced part of what we do.
And so how has that impacted how you live your life? Because those moral codes, those principles aren't practiced only in the dojo and on the mats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that it is how I live my life. Those codes, I may wear the gi or the uniform and be in the dojo and in the practice hall a certain number of hours. And in my case, it's a lot of hours, but it's still a limited amount of time. But the codes of Bushido I'm applying in the dojo, out of the dojo, in business, at home, in social interactions. It's just the lens in which we view our life as a martial artist. And so I may not be practicing a physical technique all the time. There's physical practice time, but the codes of Bushido are something that you're applying at all times. And so this is what makes it, again, a path or a way. It's not just something that you're physically doing. That's a critical component of it, of course. But you may never get physically attacked. Hopefully that's true. And so you don't have to use the physical skills. Hopefully you have them if you need them. But the codes of Bushido you can be applying to every moment of your life. So it is, I can't overstate how important it is.
Very good. So let's talk about the principle of Ju and why being adaptive is so crucial.
So depending on the context we're talking about, right, we can go from the self-defense perspective to the broadest perspective possible. Ju, which is inherent in the name of our martial art, Jukido and Jujitsu. Ju, the Japanese they have a very they have a talent for taking very deep concepts and putting it in one word. It's something they do well. But Ju is this dualistic idea where you are firm, right? You let's say firm in principle. You adhere to certain principles, and you're very firm in how you simply won't break. You're firm on principle, but you're flexible and adaptable in approach. And in fact, that this idea that flexibility, not in the flexible in the sense that you can kick really high, but flexible in the sense that you can adapt and change to your circumstances is critical from a self-defense perspective. If we always assume that you're going to be defending yourself against someone who's physically larger and stronger than you. We just make that a baseline assumption that if you are learning self-defense from us, we're going to assume that if you get attacked, God forbid, that the person who's attacking you is a physically bigger, stronger, meaner, more athletic, whatever. They have all the physical attributes on their side. And so you're not going to just beat them force on force, power against power. you're going to have to adapt to the situation, adapt to the incoming energy, as opposed to trying to fight it. You have to use the energy they're giving you, or that a situation or a predicament like we're living through right now is giving you. And instead of trying to fight it directly, go, okay, where is the opportunity here? And I just have to have, in alignment with the principle of Ju, we have to have a willingness, not only a willingness, but a kind of default mode to adapt to the circumstances that we're presented with. And, I use the example in a kid's class all the time of surfing, right? I say, Ju is not just a fighting concept. A surfer, even if they've never heard the term Ju before, is using Ju expertly, right? It's them literally against the entire ocean, right? If they fight power against power, it's over. But with a little bit of practice and timing and skill, and you're going to fall off the board sometimes, but if you persist, you can learn how to literally use the power of the entire ocean to get you to where you need to go. And so that's a beautiful example of Ju, and we can apply that again in self-defense and surfing and business and our interpersonal relationships. It's a beautiful concept to try to incorporate into our lives.
Well, I love it, and it's absolutely appropriate for this conversation today and what we're all dealing with. Excuse me, with the current pandemic. So let's talk about adapting. Let's talk about how you're applying Ju in your own business, because you have a dojo, you're instructing, teaching, but it's also a business.
Yeah.
And so how have you had to apply Ju in your own business and adapt and thrive today?
So yeah, when the pandemic hit, all of us, of course, globally, all businesses or most businesses, the overwhelming majority of businesses were affected, right? But with our business in particular, I think in a very unique way, as I always say, if you're going to learn how to swim, you have to get in the water. And if you're going to learn how to defend yourself, you're going to have to physically interact with people. And right now, that's a significant challenge. How do we physically interact to learn how to defend ourselves without human contact, right? And so, in a way that we didn't see this coming, right? So it just kind of hit us, and we had to adapt very, very quickly. And so what we've done is, in a period of days, truly, I tried to convert our entire teaching method to a digital format. And so what the mantra that we've had with our students is, listen, it's true. There are some things that you just won't be able to do right now because you don't have training partners. But instead of focusing on the things that you can't do, let's focus on the things that you can do, right? So if I were to give an analogy of a boxer right now cannot get in the ring and spar. He has no training partners. But maybe he has a heavy bag, and maybe he can go jog and jump rope. There are things that you can do. So let's amplify those areas. What are the things that we can do? And do that. And so our online dojo that we've created digitally essentially is a way to keep students engaged and to keep them training, and not only maintaining their skills, but hopefully in certain areas increasing their skill during this time, so that when we can get back in the dojo, we can take these things that we've improved on and practice with our partners. But it's been a challenge, but it's been one heck of a growth experience to take a physical, interpersonal art like ours and business, and have to convert it in a matter of days to a digital format that is still not second rate, but really trying to give students truly substantial value with the things they're learning online.
Do you see that as an opportunity that will continue for you, offering some sort of online component or educational component?
I do. Truth is, we were already kind of flirting with some of these ideas, but the pandemic kind of forced us to stop flirting and engage, right? Like we're all in now. And so I definitely, listen, there's nothing that will ever replace long-term physical training in a dojo. Having said that, Yes, the short answer is yes. My full intent, even if we could open up tomorrow, I am convinced that there is value in what we've done here long term, so that we're going to leverage the technologies that we have to enhance learning and complement and supplement learning. And so the ideal way to do it would be kind of what we're doing right now,
Hmm.
plus physical interaction would be the ideal way. We don't have that option now, but it's good to have an option that, we were able to kind of make a pivot and go, again, we don't want to fight the wave. We want to be like the surfer and kind of go with the flow, and so we don't get knocked over. And thankfully, so far for the last 6 weeks, we've been able to do that pretty successfully, I think.
Well, I've seen a few of those videos that you shared, and I appreciate you doing that. It also seems like you have an expert camera person that's been working with you as well.
I do. I actually have two camera people. One is my
True.
9-year-old daughter, who does kind of the shorter clips, and she manages. But yes, I have one of our blue belt students, Olivier, who has been incredibly gracious with his time. I think he's cooped up in the house like the rest of us, so for him to get out of the house and record us for an hour or two is fun for him too. But yes, he's a he's extremely talented, and his turnaround time is very quick. So, which is helpful because we're trying to get content out to students in a timely fashion to keep up their training. So yeah, but things are rocking and rolling.
Fantastic. George, what are you optimistic about right now?
I'm optimistic about again the opportunity that this has presented to us. Right, this has forced us not to tip our toes in this arena of kind of online teaching, but to go all in. And I'm seeing a lot of value there. I'm seeing that both, frankly, selfishly, even as a teacher, I have had to improve as a teacher. I really do genuinely feel like I feel myself becoming a more efficient and effective teacher. And because I don't have the ability to go, a student emails me a question, and that's not uncommon even before the pandemic. And they'll email a question, I'll give an explanation, but I always have the fallback, Jay, of being able to say, you know what, if that doesn't make any sense on Saturday when we're on the mats, just remind me, and we'll work it out physically. I don't have that luxury now. We just don't have that. And so I'm, as a teacher and as a martial artist, and as we mentioned earlier, someone who's always looking to grow, I'm excited personally about, I feel myself growing as a teacher. And I see my students growing. Like, I'm getting video submissions from students practicing, and I'm seeing, they're not just maintaining. A lot of these people are actually getting better.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of gone contrary to the model that you have to do this in person. I am of that belief ultimately, but I've become convinced that in many areas of training, perhaps not all, but in many areas of training, the online resources may actually in some ways be better, because a student can always go back, rewind, pause. What did he say again? They're not just going off of, what did he say on Monday night? No, they could go back. They have the reference. They can slow it down, speed it up. And so I'm optimistic that this tool that we're developing right now in terms of an online resource will stay with us beyond the pandemic. And so I'm excited. We've kind of had it one way or the other, right? We had the traditional model, and now we have the digital model. And I'm optimistic to see what happens when we put these things together. I'm quite confident that it'll be a really, really positive tool to enhance students, not only physical development, but their perspective as well.
Excellent. Well, that is exciting, and it's very encouraging to see that you have been able to adapt and that you are trying new things, and many of these things that you're doing are sticking and they're working, and you're getting good feedback from your students, which is outstanding. So keep doing that. So where should we go to learn more about you and more about the Florida Jukido Jiu-Jitsu Academy?
So all the Jukido Academy resources, we're available. Our main website is floridajukido.com. That's kind of our central hub. Complete spelling of Florida, Jukido, JUKIDO.com. And from there, you can link to our Facebook, which is Jukido Academy. Our YouTube is Jukido Academy, and our YouTube is growing significantly right now because of the things that we're doing online. We're on Instagram at Jukido Jiu-Jitsu. And yeah, so we're out there. We're always out there, but right now we're especially out there. So if folks are interested and we can help in any way, we're more than happy to do that.
Wonderful. Well, George, thank you so much for joining me today on the Business Minds Coffee Chat. I appreciate your generosity and the time that you've given us and sharing some really powerful insights, and also some of the things that you're doing in your business to continue to adapt and thrive. So greatly appreciate it. I'm grateful for you.
Well, the honor is certainly mine, and I hope that I hope it was beneficial for maybe there's a nugget or two in there that people can take away.
Yep, there you go. Well, fantastic. Well, for the rest of you, thank you so very much for watching. If you found value in this episode, please like and share with your friends. And until next time, stay healthy and optimistic, keep learning and growing. And remember that transformative change in your life and business begins with you, and nothing happens until you take action. Take care, and we'll see you soon.